Yeah, Aparna, can you share your screen, please? Because it's a bit difficult for me right now.
Yes, I will do that. Let me find the document.
I can share it in our chat, in Zoom chat, just so everyone can follow it and read it directly.
I've got it now. Yes. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Move a little bit closer to you, Dan, so that I can actually see the people in the chat in the meeting. All right, are we ready to start, you think, Ihor, or should we wait for more people?
I suppose we can start. So I see many people here already present. So I hope that if anybody would like to join, he'll join us in a few seconds.
Okay, great. So we had a few topics for today, and they're all here in this document. The first one is that there have been a number of discussions about our process for managing which features are in the release and making sure that the descriptions are complete and making sure that documentation is complete. So that's one topic that we want to discuss here today. There was feedback on the features repo in the retrospective. There's feedback on the features repo in a discussion and a comment thread, several comment threads on GitHub. So we want to cover that topic to begin with. And so that's what these first three kind of headings are around. Then another topic, second major topic that we'd like to cover today is planning for 1.6, and that just kind of dovetails from the discussion around the features repo. I don't think the 1.6 planning should take us too long. It would be good just to take a look at the dates and who will be doing what. If we have a chance to kind of put a table stakes on what the themes for the release are, that would be great. And then the last major topic is 2017 roadmap. So those are the three major topics. On the roadmap, we do have a preliminary version of it that Ihor had shared in the community meeting that came out of discussions with each of the SIGs in November at the KubeCon Developer Summit. But we want to take that further and discuss that with this group and gather more sort of substantive features roadmap for each quarter of 2017 with each of the SIGs. So that discussion will probably take some time today, but we're also going to schedule a couple of other follow-up meetings for that. So I'm hoping to start on that today and then have a follow-up meeting next week and the week after. So these are the three agenda topics we had. Features repo 1.6 and 2017 roadmap. That's what we were hoping to start with today. Is there anything else that we should discuss? Okay, great.
That's too funny that you and Dan are right next to each other, because all of a sudden Aparna's head moved into Dan's video and we're like, whoa.
Well, right, because I'm screen sharing, so I can't see the other people. So
it just was visually very confusing for a moment, then I figured it out.
Okay, great. So I'm hoping that we'll have a discussion around the features repo. We've had a lot of feedback. And Sarah and Ihor, please help me summarize it. We sort of cut and pasted the feedback from the retrospective. You can read some of this. Some of the feedback is that people are not following the process. And so, it's not easy when you go to the features repo to actually see what is going to land in the release. Some of the features aren't there, or there's an entry for a feature, but there's not much detail. Maybe the documentation isn't really linked. The alpha beta rating is inaccurate. hasn't been updated. It's not clear who necessarily the person is that one should go to. So those were some of the things. And in general, it seemed like folks wanted, in the retrospective, folks wanted more meat in the features repo in a simpler way, and also more enforcement of our process. So they sent that feedback to this group, the PM group, and asked that we take a look at what we're doing and refine our process. And so that's kind of, in a nutshell, the feedback. Igor or anyone else want to add to that?
I suppose we continue working with the agenda itself, so discuss item per item.
Yeah, okay. So there was a proposal put together for how to change the features repo. And that proposal, I think, started with Brian Grant, Ihor, and Steph added to it, and we can add to it here. Ihor, do you want to go through the proposal? I can also present the current features repo if that's of interest, just as a comparison. Let me bring that up. So this is the current features repo. You can sort for the 1.6 milestone, filter for that, and then you can go into each of these. You can see which SIG, most of these issues have a label, which SIG, and also some of them have a label in terms of whether it's alpha and beta. And if you go into the issue, you can see that this is our current template, which is fairly extensive. And it's a little onerous to fill out. And not everyone fills it out completely. And I think that's part of the problem that people have been pointing out.
Yeah, so as we have initially discussed, we are going to simplify the process of submitting the feature for people from community and let them focus on coding itself and promoting the feature rather than selecting like the checkboxes from like lots of paperwork there. So we have initially discussed it in the Melon thread, and I would like to continue discussing that right now, like the items that have to be mandatory to fill in the features repo when you submit a new feature. To this feature be finally approved, and it can be really clarified as a real feature that is going to be implemented in the release, if we're not speaking about code base itself. So first of all, features should include the primary contact, like the person who owns this feature. It will be the person who will be assigned to this feature on GitHub. There should be a responsible SIG, so every feature has to be backed up by SIG. So this lifecycle of the feature is started by initial discussion within some SIG, because like every feature covers some specific area, and SIGs are covering specific areas in our community. So every feature has to be backed up by some SIG, and this SIG has to be reflected in the features repo in this proposal. There has to be a proposal link to the design proposal, the public design proposal that is located in the Kubernetes community repo, and people will be able to review it and provide some feedback on that. Yeah, there have to be one or multiple reviewers, like from the core Kubernetes reviewers with extensible right to the code base. So they will have like the similar status as they have right now.
The idea of putting the reviewers in this upfront is, as the feature is being defined, the people who need to make the reviews and who have the skills and are able to check if they will have the bandwidth in the time that they expect for this. So this is, instead of having us find out 3 weeks before we're trying to get to feature freeze that there are, to code freeze, that there are 36 things that need to be reviewed by Vish. So if there are commitments up front for reviewers that are expected, I mean, there will be horse trading, of course, at some point, but if we do the commitments up front for reviewers, then we will have a better way to load balance that load.
So question here, suppose I'm about to put a feature into the features repo. Do I need to get agreement from the reviewer that they will review it, or do I need to actually have the feature proposal reviewed before I can put it in?
I would have reviewers be agreeing that they're at least party to it, know it's coming, you know, that they have to be engaged with the feature being put into the feature repo. The idea is to avoid the surprises. So, you know, you get your design doc approved, you now put it in a feature repo, and you say, these are the people that are also needed for the rest of nurturing this to release.
Okay, and then the reviewers need to be core members. What does, is there a specific type of member that they must be of the community?
Yeah, I was just about to ask what core meant.
So core doesn't have a meaning yet. There's work going on that. The idea is actually to grow the reviewer community. So if you can find multiple people to review, say maybe one of them is from the long-standing team of maintainers who have commit privileges, or but maybe, and this is why I say multiple reviewers, maybe two of them are, one of the two is someone who has some experience in the project but less experience. We do want to grow the reviewer pool, so more people looking at things and committing to review. The ultimate commit has to happen through the approver. Well, not the commit, but the looks good to me has to happen through the approver. So if we put multiple reviewers ahead of that, we can start growing that reviewer pool and growing that implicit trust as people read other people's reviews. So
one reviewer is not sufficient. There should be more than one reviewer?
That would be my preference, but they won't all be from, you know, the core senior team. And again, core doesn't have a real meaning, Caleb. You are completely correct, but there is, we're working on what that language is right now. I think, what does governance have on it right now as words?
There's
I've pasted the link to governance document where, well, like we have started to define any roles in the community.
Right.
There are top level, the people in the top level owners files, which is order 10. It's actually, I think, 7. And there's owners files sprinkled throughout the, you know, Kubernetes repo. But so the interesting thing about that is that does not map necessarily directly to SIGs, right? Because you could be a reviewer or approver in a bunch of different files that you may not, you know, even be involved in. So,
which we're trying to tidy in some ways, that areas of the code get attached to special interest groups, and people with knowledge about that area of code participate in those groups, and the mapping gets closer. So an approver, it appears to be someone in the owner's file and will be needed to get code merged. Previously, a reviewer for that code base for at least 3 months, expected to be responsive, blah, blah, blah. A reviewer has been an org member for at least 3 months and is familiar with some part of the code base to be in some owner's file as a reviewer. So, and then there can be additional reviewers. I would say a minimum of of a reviewer who is in the owner's file, and then additional reviewers to grow. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe it's capital R reviewers and then lower R reviewers.
Okay, so at least one from the owner's file.
Yep.
Well, I guess the specific owner's file, I guess the closest owner's file to the code chain.
Yeah.
The code area owner's file.
Yeah, I mean, there's other problems with how the owner's files are computed and collected. But I don't want to, rabbit hole here. But if you are having a requirement for multiple reviewers, I would say more importantly, if you're trying to expand the pool specifically, it would be important, at least in my mind, as a kind of, offhand experience, that the reviewer pool for any feature would contain not all people from the same company.
First of all, I'd like to ask people who are going to start working on some feature to start working with the reviewers at the period when you are discussing this feature within the SIG. So when some people, almost every SIG has like some people who are in the owner's files, right? So almost every SIG has some core reviewers. So you may start from this.
Well, my concern is that if you are employee of certain companies, you will face possibly less scrutiny on your review, in your feature review, than you would if you were an external contributor. Because, there are numbers that suggest that that is true, that people are able to pair up on reviews and move their features in much more quickly. It's not necessarily related to what we're talking about here, but it's an interesting consideration if we're talking about the requirement of having multiple reviewers on a feature. Just something to keep in mind.
So Caleb, I would actually suggest that we want to encourage that speed and that trust through practice and having more cross-pollination of reviewers. So I like your more than one company doing reviews, and I like more than one depth of skill set doing reviews. But I don't know that I would frame it as if the same company reviews it, it will get through faster. I would frame the why we're trying to do this with multiple companies and multiple skill sets is as a way to grow the reviewers pool and grow the trust in people's skill set, which is all that we really work on here.
Right, and I'm trying to be diplomatic here.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's making what I'm trying to say difficult to understand. But there is a feeling, these are some of the developers that I work with, it's
a Google feature and a Google reviewer through faster.
Well, yeah. So the feedback I am getting is that the trust may be extended too quickly. If you are depending on your employer, and that is something that is engendering some resentment in the wider community of developers that I interact with.
And so I'm going to not be diplomatic. And is this explicitly, you don't have to be as long a part of the Kubernetes project as a Googler to get that trust extended to you as you have to be from some other organization? Is that the specific concern you're trying to address?
That is a specific concern I'm trying to address.
Okay. We have made changes in the way we are doing this in a couple of ways. One, in order to stop that or to slow that, because of a couple of things. One, it used to be a year and a half ago, anytime a new person was hired inside Google to work on Kubernetes, they were added to the Kubernetes org and given maintainer rights immediately. That no longer happens, for example. But we are addressing that, but there's to your point, the trust, I wouldn't necessarily say the trust is extended too quickly. Maybe it is, but that's not what I would focus on. I would focus on getting more cross collaboration, because if you're sitting next to someone, you're going to grow trust faster than if you're only conversing over GitHub. So we have to do better in getting more cross pollination between the organizations. But I hear your point.
I totally agree. And I have thing to bother you about regarding that offline, just specifically about that.
Okay, so I've captured here that the recommendation is that each features repo proposal should have 2+ reviewers, at least one from the code area owner's file, and those reviewers should have agreed. And the preference will be to have reviewers representing multiple companies. Ultimately, it's the SIG that will decide if this is a sufficiently diverse reviewer or a qualified reviewer for the proposal, but this would be our recommendation. Is that fair?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. Approver for LGTM, by the way, the SIG, so is the SIG the one that gives the LGTM and the approver is from the SIG? Is that the idea?
It's how it works in practice, but there's nothing to enforce that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So who can approve then?
Anyone who's listed as an approver in that owner's file. And how you get that is, that is not a well-defined process. Well-defined, I mean, not exist.
We're working
But
on it.
Not a defined process. Yeah.
The closest thing we have at this point is that governance doc, and we are working hard to make that tighter and make it more judicious and easy to follow and know where you stand on a ladder, because it is one of the requirements for us to graduate from an incubated project at the Cloud Native Compute Foundation to a full project at the Cloud Native Compute Foundation as well. So on top of the discomfort in the company, we want to keep the project moving forward.
Okay.
Sorry.
Looking at the old template, and it just says that it should have been through a review. I think our assumption was that the review would be with the relevant SIG. Is that something we should bake into this? Should we say here that the approver should be from your relevant SIG?
It's likely, but not mandatory. I prefer focus on the owner's file.
Okay.
Here, because like right now, before we have defined the process how people are like selected to be present in these owner's files.
Okay. Okay, I've captured that. Ihor, do you want to continue going through the rest of the
Yeah, so release note and documentation link. So these fields are absolutely needed, having the experience working with the previous releases. So we have to receive from the feature contributor like 1 sentence, 2 sentence release notes that this sentence will be added to the release notes of the global release, and the documentation link, the link to the PR that describes this feature, the documentation to our Kubernetes GitHub IO. The next point is the current stage of the feature. So does it target alpha, beta, or stable? So I suppose it's clear here. And timeline and status. So like in this point, we have to describe the actual like timeline. What is the status of current development of the feature? So has it been like started being developed, or will it be like finished in time and so on? Parna would like to add to the list. Or anyone else?
I have a question around enforcement of these fields. So some things like the release note, the actual approval, the documentation link might not be available until the feature is mostly done. I think there are some of these fields that we must have when something is submitted to the features repo. So for example, for this release, we have a deadline of January 24th. Everything needs to be in the features repo by January 24th. But the release note and the documentation may not be written. So I would like to consider that we do enforce everything else. Like the approver, the reviewer, there should already be a proposal, there should already be a link, the SIG should be identified, all these other things should be done. Otherwise, if it's not done by January 24th, we kick it out of the features repo. So this now gets into the enforcement discussion.
That sounds reasonable. So should we move release notes to like a separate section of documentation? Because those, like you said, they're not going to be written until the feature's written a lot of the time. So maybe just move it to the bottom and say,
yeah, we just move it to the bottom.
Or maybe we require a draft of it, because you should be able to draft a release note.
Okay.
Maybe not the documentation. Maybe separate out the documentation. The no documentation tends to be written after.
So let's say there's an issue summary right at the top, like this description. This you must have. If you don't have this, then I mean we don't know what the issue is.
Yeah.
Well, we have also the feature complete deadline that is February 27 and for 1.6. So before this deadline, we have to see all these fields filled and like release notes prepared, documentation prepared, and so on. At the same time, like before features repo freeze, we have to see only the submitted features with the initial mandatory fields.
So I don't know if it's practical. So February 24th, yes, I think I think,
That's when we enter code slash.
yeah, I mean, at that point, I think it is reasonable to have the documentation. But I think the other fields should be there by January 24th. Like the owner, that there is a reviewer.
Yeah.
If there's no reviewer and approver identified, then what's the point of the feature being there?
Yeah.
Okay, so
So everything's required by January 24th except for the release note docs, which
Right.
is required by Feb 24th.
Right.
Sound right, Ihor?
fair?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay. Any other discussion? I think we'll need to define what these possible statuses are. Right. Anything else on this?
Not for me. Does anybody has any questions? Okay, so probably we may move ahead.
Okay, so the next step here is that you're going to create a template and a PR with the
Yes, and like if there will be any suggestions or ongoing discussions, I would like to invite people to continue them there.
Yeah, and in this Thursday's community meeting, we would like to make an announcement about this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's discuss enforcement. Okay, so we put together this template and this process, but people might not fill it out. We've said that these are the requirements. If someone doesn't meet the requirements, or a feature doesn't get into the features repo, but it's already being worked on. I mean, there's a variety of these kinds of cases that have occurred. What sort of enforcement mechanisms should we have?
So as we have discussed that yesterday, so I would like to propose having this feature like the first step. We have to disallow people to merge this feature, but if this feature will be merged, this feature won't be reflected in the release notes, documentations, and so on. But again, we have to discuss the policy for that, because it may happen that some people will prepare the awesome code base for the feature. This feature is ready to be merged, but we don't have any defined information about it, like zero documentation, zero release notes, and so on.
Okay, yeah, so some of the enforcement mechanisms we have is that if it's not in the features report, it will not be included in the blog post. What else can we do? I'm looking at Garrett, and I'm hoping that there are people on the call that can comment. I know people have strong opinions about this because it came up in the retrospective.
Ideally, we should be in sync with approvers to deny them from merging this feature into the code base before the feature template and all the necessary information will be filled.
Yeah, absolutely. If we don't have documentation, if the feature template isn't filled out, it doesn't seem reasonable to put it into a release as a feature, because how are people going to know to use it? And I think documentation is kind of essential to it being merged. So, or all of the things in that feature templates are kind of essential to it getting merged.
But how would you actually go about enforcing that? So if you had a random PR on Kubernetes without any link to the feature that it exists in Kubernetes features, how would you know that these two are correlated and one needs to gate the other? Just a thought experiment.
If you're core approver, you have to be aware of it.
I mean, these people are generally fairly overloaded. Like, I don't imagine Brian Grant's going to be walking through Kubernetes features and looking at every PR on Kubernetes and trying to cross-correlate the two. I mean, maybe that should be a responsibility of the PM group, but I don't imagine that most of the people who are listed in the owner's files as approvers have that kind of bandwidth. Because that's how they got to be in the approvers.
Ihor, didn't we talk about having like a shepherd as well as an owner? So someone that's writing the code and responsible for implementing the feature, but then someone from the PM team that's kind of a shepherd for the feature and that would be responsible for things like this?
It may help us, but with the experience of having shepherds, not so many people who are submitting the features have shepherds and selecting shepherds.
Yeah. And it's only an influence role. It's not that they are going to write this, right? They're not.
Yeah.
They can do the cross correlation.
It's like more advisory than mandatory.
So okay. Other ideas for enforcement? I think based on this discussion, you know, kind of, I think we have to figure out what the time frame is, but probably 1 or 2 weeks before feature freeze, we should notify the SIG, notify the approver if the documentation is not looking like it's going to be complete. We should flag the status in the community meeting. You know, it'll be the PM rep that can follow up and chase it down. And then if it's not in the features repo, you know, we can take two actions. We can, you know, not include it in the blog post, and or we can just disallow it completely from the release.
And I guess instead of enforcement, can we also think about some kind of incentivization? So for other things in Contributex, we've talked about like dashboards or leaderboards.
Mm-hmm.
That spreadsheet, I think, is a great way of seeing pretty clearly, or the one you made last time, what's going into the release. But it's something that mostly the PM team used. I wonder if we had something that was maybe more broadly communicated, all the features that were going into the release. If people would make sure that their thing was reflected in the you know, in that dashboard. If there was something really public that was like, these are all the things going into 1.6. Does that sound like something we can or should do? Crickets. Basically, my thought is that people aren't intentionally not entering things into the features repo. It's just like, okay, I'm working on my code, and you know, you sort of lose track of it. So if there was some very visible place where they knew it should be, where like all the other features were, I think people might make an effort to make theirs show up there.
Yeah. So we were going to flag it in the community meeting. And I do think that Ihor is planning to maintain a spreadsheet. I want to be wary of adding more process on the part of the people maintaining state on the release, because that doesn't necessarily, you know, encourage people to. It may not lead to the result that we want, but we'll have some process, and we can certainly flag.
Sure, I just want to make it easy to get visibility into what's in the features repo. So if something was just displaying really easily.
So I'd like to propose that we actually review what's in the features repo in the community meeting a couple of times during a release. And we don't necessarily need to create slides or tricks, you know, or spreadsheets out of it, unless someone wants to. If you or someone else wants to create a tricks, we can do that. But I like to take a couple of community meetings just to go over, you know, here's what's in the features repo, just to remind everybody what is planned for the release, and here's like a summary status. And then, you know, if you're planning a feature that's not here, this is the date by which it should be here. And if you're planning a feature, you know, that doesn't have documentation, just a reminder that it must have. So a reminder of the process. I think we can do that in a couple of, you know, 2 or 3 times during a release in the community meeting. That would be my
that sounds reasonable. Yeah, I agree. I'm going to prepare the spreadsheet as I did during the previous releases, and like it will be still manual job, and I will like constantly maintain it. At the same time, we can use the spreadsheet to track what is the actual status of the feature, and to remind always regarding the actual status of the features.
Okay. So any other comments or feedback?
So from the retrospective, we actually brought up one of the comments was about the spreadsheet being the source of truth. Just want to make sure that like if that's probably what's going to happen next time unless we do something, just making sure that we're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think that was a great way of kind of having it all in one place, especially if we're keeping it up to date, which I think Ihor is kind of volunteering to take on, but we can all.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think just to close out, so on the features repo, we've decided the new template and PR, that's the next step. On the enforcement, I do think that if there's more discussion that we want to have offline, we should state that this is what is planned, and maybe we open a thread on this. Here, do you mind doing that?
No, that's fine.
So a thread on Contribex or a thread on community?
What would be the best place?
I was thinking community. I think this should be kind of broadcast as widely as possible.
Yeah.
That sound all right, Caleb?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Kubernetes dev, you mean, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's the best place.
I guess one thing we could do, since continuing that thought process, maybe we could make a different priority queue for the merge queue for features that we could gauge or not.
Like features are more prior than.
In theory, you would imagine that during the release that a feature should have a higher priority. So if it PR had like a feature label that we knew that we applied when we knew that it did all the things we needed in the features repo, it would get merged in rather than not. So people would be less likely to game the system then. Since,
Well, yeah, that's reasonable. We have the separate like feature complete date, and after this feature complete, we are moving to bug fixes. So we probably may be more focused on merging the new features before the feature complete date. It's February 27 for this release. And after that, we can be more focused on the bug fixes. Is that what you're speaking about?
It's a way to thinking of ways to gate incomplete features from merge at all, and include PRs that implement a feature.
I'm looking for guidance from someone who's been on the release team before. Is that a practical suggestion? So the suggestion is that we have some sort of features repo-based flag that gates merges.
I mean, if we added a label for feature complete on Kubernetes, and the merge queue knew to get that higher priority, it might work. There's already a priority ranking mechanism in the merge queue.
Well, like higher priority than what? Than like bug fixes? Than features going into like a later release? Like what?
I would say high. It would be probably equivalent to or higher than than a P0 that would apply on Kubernetes. So it should be definitely higher than P1 and P2, which is what most PRs should get.
Yeah.
Critical bug fix.
Yeah. Maybe it should be like equal to P0 because nothing can be more important than P0.
Right. Well, yeah, it's a carrot rather than a stick, I guess.
I'm not so sure about it. I think this is something that would be useful to discuss on that mailing list. But yeah, if people want to put in that much enforcement, we can certainly go that direction. I'm hoping that these other mechanisms would be, sufficient, but if not, then I think that that's fair.
Yeah, we will test during this release and provide some feedback on 1.6 retrospective and probably implement this process for the next iterations. But right now, for me, it looks perfect.
Okay.
I hope it will be perfect in the real life.
Okay. Okay, should we move on to the second topic, which is, actually there's one remaining part of this, which is, so we're saying that there's going to be a PM rep in each SIG, and that person will follow up. There's a couple of things that we want the PM rep to do. So one is obviously what we've been talking about, which is with regard to the features repo, identify. Now this rep would be per SIG. So one PM rep from this group per SIG, and they would be essentially identifying all the features in the current release from that SIG and following up, the type of follow-up that we just talked about. And they, they're not the owners of the features, but they're encouraging the owners to make sure that they have an entry and that they, meet the deadlines and prepare the documentation and so forth.
I suppose that, sorry for interrupting. I suppose that these responsibilities can be also shared with the SIG leads, because partially that the SIG lead responsibilities.
Yeah, it could be. And maybe what we do is, if we don't have a PM rep that volunteers from this group for a particular SIG, then the default is that it's the SIG lead. And the SIG lead can always ask or volunteer someone in the SIG to play the PM rep. The other responsibilities are to attend these type of PM group meetings. And I think the major one, the other big one, is to really help the SIG develop the annual roadmap, on a quarterly basis or a release by release basis, but kind of get a look ahead for the whole year or the remainder of the year. And then what we wanted to do is to get this list together for each SIG, who is the PM rep, and again, defaulting to the SIG lead, and maintain that list on GitHub. So that's the other piece of this proposal. I've listed all the current SIGs here. This is not where we're going to actually capture the names of the PM reps, but just since we have this group on this call, please take a look at the list. And I think, Ihor, you're going to publish this list on GitHub.
Yeah.
And then people should enter their names. How should people enter their names?
Using PRs.
Or they just send them to you, or?
Well, we can prepare like yet another spreadsheet where people will fill with their names, and receiving all the information, I will submit the PR with all the field data.
So there is
Copy-paste the spreadsheet to GitHub.
Since that list is already maintained on GitHub, maybe the most direct thing would be to make PRs against the special interest group listing on GitHub. Like
okay.
if you don't volunteer.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah.
Okay, so in the notes for this meeting, can we send out a link to that list and ask people to submit their names if they want to volunteer?
Well, one more question. So I suppose that this list will change from release to release. So these people are not assigned on the continuous role as SIG leads are. They will be assigned.
I mean, you can.
I mean, so are these roles defined per release, or these roles are like constant roles?
Therefore, as long as a person wants to play that role.
Mm-hmm. Because I would like to understand where is the better place to put this list on. So in the features repo per release or the community repo?
I don't think we should try and redo it every release. And anyone have a different thought? I think that it's too much churn to have a new PM rep. I mean, especially if we're trying to develop an annual roadmap. It should at least be for a year that you're the PM rep for a SIG.
I mean, if people are clamoring to assign themselves more busy work responsibility, then, sure, hop in. But I imagine you are correct, Aparna, that if you sign up, you will be likely that PM rep until you no longer are interested in working as the PM rep.
Yes, and I think implicit here is attend your SIG meetings. Yeah, it should be a member of the SIG.
We may have to ask for some polite shuffling because there's definitely SIGs that overlap in unfortunate ways.
Okay.
Like,
sorry.
I don't know.
I would not recommend that one individual take on multiple SIG rep responsibilities, unless the SIG isn't particularly, active.
Well, in this case, it would be better to make this role by default, this PM representative, to assign this role by default to a SIG lead. Mm-hmm. Because we don't have any people who are SIG leads for multiple SIGs, as far as I remember. So yeah. if you're lead of some specific SIG, you're lead in some specific area, and you're responsible for this area also in the PM field.
Okay, that sounds good.
So should we just add that to like the SIG lead's responsibility? Is that documented somewhere? Like,
It's not documented, but it's likely to be documented.
What was the thing we wanted to add to SIG lead's responsibility? Because I have that on my to-do list.
That they will be the default PM rep for the SIG, or they have to nominate someone or find someone who's going to be the PM rep. And we'd like the PM rep to be, these are the responsibilities that they have to fulfill. They have to do these things. And then we want the PM rep to be a 1-year term, at least.
Okay. So
Sarah, do you see
each
that-
SIG needs to have a PM representative, and if there is none designated, then it will be the SIG lead, and you'd like them to be designated for a period of a year.
Yes.
Okay.
And then Sarah, we have somewhere a list of the SIGs somewhere on GitHub. We want to add the names of the SIG, the PM leads, PM reps there. So we need to send out a notification to, who else should we send it to? Just this group or a broader list?
So I would recommend, because you're creating a new role, so there's a PM rep for each SIG. So you need to reach out to the SIGs and ask them to define a PM rep and add it to the community README that has all of the SIGs in it.
Yeah, we can ask it using SIG lead's mailing list.
That was going to be my suggestion, to start with SIG lead's mailing list.
Yeah.
That the PM group is asking for a PM rep to be identified from each of the SIGs and to participate in the PM group.
Okay. Sounds good. What about this group? I mean, if someone wants to volunteer to be the PM group, okay, so then we should probably send a notification to this group saying that, you know, if you want to be the PM rep, please contact the relevant SIG leader and volunteer yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just said in the chat that I'm willing to volunteer for Node.
Who's
And
that?
And
And
Dan
immediately volunteered Dan.
for a cluster lifecycle.
Which Dan?
Our Dan
Dan
Gillespie.
Me, Dan.
Gillespie.
Okay, so please contact the SIG leads for that. And I don't know if I have the right spelling here. Someone help me.
PIE.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Sounds good. So we will do this. I think we're done with this topic entirely. Shall we go to 1.6 planning?
Yeah, just in brief, because we have discussed it partially.
Okay. What I wanted to do, though, so I think everyone knows now the timeline, right? So the 24th. So that means that we have, 2 weeks? We want to get PM reps identified for the SIGs quickly. Actually, we want to let the SIG leads know as soon as we have the new features template. And then, you know, we will follow up with each of the SIGs through the PM reps to make sure that that gets filled out. We will be doing the update in the community meeting. So I think that gives us what we need for the 24th. What I wanted to brainstorm here was themes for the release. Do we have I don't know if we have sufficient representation from each of the SIGs, but we can go through what's in the features repo. And I'd like to discuss what some of the themes are.
Well, the main theme for this release is like stabilization. So we are not expecting so many new features. We expect the old features to be stabilized and developed like from alpha to beta stable state.
Yes.
There are also many features on the next milestone label. The reason why they are still there because they have discontinued or stopped their development for 1.5, but they haven't confirmed that they are going to be developed for 1.6.
So you're saying some things from the next milestone could come into 1.6?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go through what is marked as 1.6 right now. and just kind of go through this a little bit. So data pod affinity, this is, I think, SIG scheduling, and this is kind of resource. Is there anyone from that SIG that has more detail? Is this a theme for the SIG? Is there a theme for the SIG for 1.6? You might not have anyone from there. How about from SIG apps? So it seems like stateful sets, there's some work going to happen in 1.6. Is there anything else from SIG apps?
I mean, for stateful sets like init containers, then there's like three other big areas within SIG app.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of it's going from alpha to beta, but there's stuff in there too. I mean, I haven't read the document.
Yeah, so for apps, it's GA, init container GA?
Let me check.
Or is it, yeah, I think init container is already, okay. And other features are moving to beta?
Yeah, there's some stuff in there. So I'll throw that out.
Yeah, if you could think a little bit through, what you would put on the roadmap, because you're not going to put every single feature on the roadmap, but some set of, here's what the theme is, here's what the output will be in 1.6.
So there's stuff in Helm composed.
Yeah, a little bit more
Yep.
tighter than that, but
Yeah.
okay. Federation. Alan, do you have state? Is there anyone else?
So it's primarily getting the API objects to beta for 1.6.
All the ones that are alpha today? Or new objects?
Including federated ingress.
Okay, great. Let's see.
Well, speaking about SIG apps, we have also demonstrated updates that are targeted alpha for this release. The actual work has been performed during 1.5 iteration, but we had zero bandwidth from the reviewers to review it and implement in 1.5. So this work is going to be continued for 1.6, and this feature targets alpha for this.
Sorry, alpha for what? For which upgrades?
For demonstrated updates.
Okay.
That was.
Yes, it was.
That was in
And then
It is.
Federation, if you can add improving testing framework.
Great. That's in line with, I think, what we had for the annual planning as well. Dashboard UI or UI SIG, does anyone have any idea? What else is on the roadmap for 1.6?
Not sure the people are here. I see Windows Server containers, and I see that Michael is here from Apprenda.
Yes, I would like to understand Windows SIG thoughts on this release.
So for Windows, we're going to stabilize the features that we added in alpha for 1.5, and we're working on improving the networking of basically to create parity on the networking abstraction between Linux and Windows. So that's the main thing we're working right now. So stabilization and improved networking.
Great, thank you. Okay. SIG storage?
Yeah, we've got some stuff going to beta, and there are some. We did a stabilization last release, so we've got a couple of things that we're also trying to do in terms of design. It probably will not land, but we're doing design work on local storage and also some mount option pass-through things. So I don't know if those are in this the features repo yet. I'm going to make sure that they are if they're not.
I don't think design work will necessarily be in the features repo. If you're
No, yeah, we've got some other stuff that probably should be though, like the mount option pass through. So I'll make sure that's in there at least.
Okay.
And I'm just looking through the list I have on the. We did a planning session last week. Maybe some metrics things. So I'll follow up with the relevant parties to make sure that they're working on adding features repo entries.
Great. Great. Okay, SIG node. We have some, or actually, maybe we should talk about SIG auth and SIG lifecycle.
Yeah, I linked in Node's planning document.
Okay. Yes, I do have that. I think we should try and come up with what we would put on the roadmap in terms of themes. Do you think you have enough detail here to do that? Maybe these are the themes, right? Runtime portability.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you might have enough to put that on the roadmap. I mean, and the reason to come up with these themes is that it will make it easier when we are in the community meeting to communicate. You know, here are the themes that this SIG is going for, and you know, it does or does not have full entries into the features repo. So when we communicate status, that'll make it easier for us to describe it. Anyone from Lifecycle or auth? Lifecycle, it seems like TLS Bootstrap. This is interesting. Support out of process, out of tree cloud providers. Alpha. That's a new feature. And then this looks like beta for Cuba API. Is anyone here from Lifecycle? So we have a gap. We need to find a PM rep for that. Okay, and then SIG auth. Anyone here from SIG auth representing that SIG? So looks like RBAC. It's not clear whether this is going beta. It just says alpha.
It is RBAC to beta.
Okay, and then authenticated access to Kubernetes API is that's going to GA.
I do not know.
Okay.
It says stable.
Is that the same as GA?
I don't know. These labels changed recently.
I thought it was just because there's alpha, beta, and stable.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I think we have you know, whatever we could find in the repo, but as we get our reps assigned for each of the SIGs, I think we'll have more fidelity here, and we can use that you know, to track status and to report into the community meeting, and also just to maintain the roadmap. So I'm going to set up a meeting, the same kind of meeting as today, for next week, so that we can take a look at our overall roadmap and get some more details from each of the SIGs for the discussion.
That next meeting will also be on a new Zoom URL, so I will get that all set up. So between here and there, and then Aparna, I will send it to you, so you and Garrett can facilitate and get the Zoom account opened and such.
Okay, thanks,
Sarah.
Sarah. And we want to do a readout this Thursday.
Please put it on the agenda.
Okay, we'll do.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.